The warm sounds of Le Doux Matin Café on Saint-Germain Street filled the air. The soft clink of spoons against porcelain cups, the faint hiss of the espresso machine, the low murmur of morning conversations. Amina Diallo, 29, of Senegalese origin, her cream-colored apron slightly faded, knelt gently beside a corner table. Her hands moved rhythmically in French Sign Language, LSF. Opposite her sat a petite girl about 9 years old, her large brown eyes shadowed with sadness. She oversaw each movement, slowly mimicking them before breaking into a small, fragile smile as though it had blossomed for years. That was Élodie Morel, the only daughter of one of the most powerful men in France. That fragile joy shattered in an instant. A voice rang out cold, slicing through the quiet space. Espèce de bonne, noire, immonde. Mày dám lại gần con gái tao sao? Filthy black maid? How dare you get near my daughter? The roar silenced the entire cafe. The words cut like a knife, tearing apart the peaceful air. Amina froze, her hands trembling mid-sign, her eyes widening in shock. The man stood tall, clad in a finely tailored navy blue suit. He was Adrien Morel, tech billionaire, the head of a conglomerate specializing in artificial intelligence and global connectivity. His face twisted with rage, his eyes gleaming with contempt and a vague, unspoken fear. In his hand was a wooden broom snatched hastily from behind the counter, and before Amina could rise, he swung it. Crack! The blow landed on her shoulder, making her stagger. A sharp cry of pain escaped her throat, but she bit her lip hard, refusing to let tears fall. Around her, nearby customers gasped. A middle-aged man whispered loudly to his wife, just enough for others to hear. See? That's the problem with them always trying to get close to the wealthy. The woman nodded, lips curling into a satisfied smirk. Pretty, maybe, but never trustworthy. They always have tricks. A woman draped in a silk scarf leaned to her friend and murmured disdainfully. Perhaps she wanted money, or worse, to trap Mr. Morel in some lawsuit. You know how they are. The whispers spread like smoke, curling under the ceiling, clinging to Amina. Each word cut deeper than the strike of the broom. Her body stiffened, shoulders shaking, but she stayed silent, offering no defense. Adrien swung again, this time lashing her arm. Stay away from her, you hear me? Don't think you can pretend to be kind and plot something behind it. I know you're kind. Amina raised her arm, shielding herself more in instinct than defiance. Her breath caught in her chest. She struggled to speak. Monsieur, I meant no. Shut up, Adrien roared. I know your tricks. Sweet smiles, then waiting for a chance to harm decent people. You disgust me. Around them, a chorus of murmurs, yes, that's right, rose from the surrounding tables. They didn't see a young woman being humiliated and beaten. They saw only the prejudice already etched in their minds. Amina clenched her fists, her shoulder burning, but her eyes never left Élodie, the little girl trembling, her small hands gripping the table's edge. Amina saw one thing clearly in the girl's tear-filled eyes. She understood. She saw everything. The whispers still lingered in the air as Amina slowly rose to her feet. Her shoulder throbbed, skin burning where the broom had struck, but the humiliation weighed heavier than the pain. She drew a deep breath, ready to walk away, then her eyes caught the cafe's wide window overlooking Saint-Germain Street. Paris at noon was shrouded in a gray haze. Pale yellow taxis jostled with delivery trucks, tires screeching on the rain-slicked asphalt. And right there on the sidewalk, just steps from the curb, sat Élodie in her tiny red ballet shoes, crouched low, a piece of colored chalk in hand, sketching trembling circles on the damp cement. A jolt of terror seized Amina's chest. The child was too close to the street. A white delivery truck was barreling around the corner, its engine growling, headlights glaring against the wet road. Élodie, Adrien shouted, his voice strangled with panic. But the little girl didn't hear. She didn't turn. Instead, she stood abruptly, her innocent eyes fixed across the street on a puppy trotting by, its tail wagging. The tray in Amina's hands slipped. Crash! Plates and glasses shattered across the cafe floor. But she didn't care. Her body lunged forward before her mind could catch up. Everything happened in the span of a heartbeat. Wind roared in her ears. The screech of brakes tore through the air like metal against bone. The truck skidded, tires sliced through a puddle, water exploding. In that instant, Amina wrapped her arms around Élodie, twisting her body, throwing all her strength into pushing the girl away from the road. Her body slammed against the freezing pavement, rolling hard, her back and shoulders smashing against the curb. Thud! The delivery truck thundered past, missing them by mere centimeters. The acrid stench of burning rubber filled the air as smoke curled upward. Amina squeezed her eyes shut, arms locked around the girl. For a moment, the world was nothing but the hammering of her heartbeat. When she opened them, Élodie clung to her neck, trembling violently. The girl's wide brown eyes brimmed with tears, but a spark of trust and safety glimmered. Adrien Morel burst out of the café, his face drained of all color. He dropped to his knees beside them, his voice breaking. Élodie, are you hurt? Are you in pain? But the child did not let go of Amina. Her tiny hand shook as she lifted it, fingers moving slowly in the air, a simple sign, yet one that carried immeasurable weight. Safe. The street fell silent. Every gaze, even those who had whispered scorn inside the café, was fixed on the sight before them. Adrien froze. In the 2 years since his wife died in the accident, he had never once seen his daughter communicate with her hands. A faint smile flickered across the girl's lips as she clung tighter to Amina. Amina panted, heart pounding, her shoulders screaming with pain. Yet she managed a trembling smile, whispering hoarsely to Adrien, "She's safe." Adrien swallowed hard. The broom he had hurled aside still lay abandoned on the café floor. The face once twisted in rage and contempt cracked open, revealing something he had never allowed the world to see: his fear of losing the only thing he had left. That afternoon, the Paris sky hung gray, drizzle streaking the window panes. Amina sat at a small table by the window, in her rented third-floor room on Belleville Boulevard. Her blouse was still stained from the fall earlier that morning. Each movement sent a sharp ache through her shoulder and back. But what kept her from closing her eyes was not the pain, it was the image of Élodie trembling in her arms. A knock echoed at the door, insistent but not harsh. Amina frowned and rose to open it. Standing there was none other than Adrien Morel, the man who had humiliated her that morning. His charcoal overcoat was drenched with rain, his tie askew, his face weary. Beside him, Élodie hid partly behind his leg, clutching a small notebook against her chest. The narrow hallway seemed to close in, heavy with silence. Amina gripped the doorknob, her eyes icy. "What are you doing here? Haven't you done enough?" Adrien exhaled, his voice hoarse, deeper and softer than it had been that morning. "I owe you an apology." Amina let out a brittle laugh. "An apology? You struck me with a broom in front of an entire café, calling me a filthy maid. And you think one apology is enough?" Adrien stood silent for a few beats. Then, lowering his head, something neither the press nor the investment world had ever seen from the iron-willed billionaire. "Number. Enough or not, it doesn't matter. I cannot take back my words, but I can change my actions. My daughter needs you." He turned to Élodie. The little girl lifted her gaze, her brown eyes glistening. Slowly, her small hand rose, forming a sign in the air. "Stay." Amina clenched her palms. She wanted to turn away and slam the door, but those eyes, once hollow eyes, now glimmered with a fragile spark of hope. Adrien straightened, his expression regaining the resolve of a man used to commanding thousands in a tech empire. "I want to offer you a position in my household, not as a maid, not as a café worker, as Élodie's full-time sign language tutor. A permanent role, with pay 10 times what you earn now, housing, and every condition provided." Amina shook her head, her voice hard. "You think money can buy everything, even erase the humiliation of this morning?" Adrien bit his lip, answering slowly, "Number. But it can buy my child a chance to laugh again, to speak with her hands. And you are the only one who has made that possible." The damp hallway pressed in on them, heavy with silence. Amina looked at Adrien, not the powerful billionaire, but a father on the brink, clutching his daughter's tiny hand as though letting go would mean losing everything. Élodie stepped closer to Amina and lifted her notebook. On the page was a shaky drawing, 2 tall stick figures and 1 small holding hands. Beside them, a crooked circle. Inside, in wobbly letters, was written, "Sûr," safe. Amina's heart tightened. She closed her eyes, drawing in a long breath. When she opened them again, her gaze was steady. I promise nothing. I am not doing this for you. I am doing it for her. Adrien nodded, a breath of relief escaping his chest. That alone is enough. Outside, the rain pattered on the stairwell, like the opening bars of a score, yet to unfold a score not only of pain and humiliation, but of storms still waiting in the shadows. 2 days later, Amina stood before the towering iron gates of the Morel estate on the outskirts of Versailles. The black metal bars curled into intricate patterns, crowned by the Morel family crest, 2 silver lions carved in relief, facing each other. Beyond, a perfectly trimmed rose garden stretched out, and the grand white mansion loomed like a fortress, gleaming under the afternoon sun. She drew a deep breath. Each step through the main gate weighed heavily in her chest. It felt like she was crossing into another world, where every gaze was sharp with judgment. As soon as Amina's foot touched the marble steps, a cold voice rang out. Well, this is unusual. A girl from a Saint-Germain Café walks through the Morel residence's front door. It was Margot Delacourt, the head housekeeper. A pearl necklace clasped tightly at her throat, around 50, lean in figure, dressed in a long black gown. Her gray eyes glimmered with arrogance, and every etched wrinkle on her stern face radiated disdain. Someone like you, Margot sneered, ought to use the back entrance with the cleaning staff. Amina gripped the strap of her worn canvas bag. She wanted to fire back, but in front of her stood Élodie, clutching her hand firmly, eyes shining with trust. Instead of answering, Amina bent down and signed to the girl. It's okay. We'll go in together. She was struck by the opulence inside the grand hall. Frescoes of angels painted across a high ceiling, crystal chandeliers scattering prismatic light, and marble floors polished to a mirror sheen. Yet the atmosphere was cold, like a cathedral abandoned. That evening, Adrien hosted a family dinner with a few close friends. The long table was draped in white linen, silverware gleamed, and crystal glasses brimmed with scarlet wine. Amina sat at one end beside Élodie, every other glance directed at her, curious, calculating, and laced with contempt. Daniel Rousseau, a silver-haired man in an expensive gray pinstripe suit, his lips perpetually curled in a half-smile, tilted his glass and drawled mockingly. A sign-language tutor. From a café to Versailles. Quite the journey for a young woman. Snickers rippled around the table. A blonde woman with a diamond ring sparkling on her finger added, "Times have surely changed. Today, anyone can dine with the upper class so long as they know how to make an impression." Heat rushed to Amina's face. She set down her cutlery, lifted her chin, and fixed Daniel with a calm but razor-sharp voice. "I'm not here to impress anyone. I'm here for Élodie." She turned to the girl and signed a small, playful phrase. Élodie burst into laughter, a pure, ringing sound that filled the hall, instantly rendering the mockery hollow. Margot arched her brows, annoyance flickering in her eyes. Daniel sipped his wine, hiding a bitter smirk behind the rim of his glass. Adrien, silent since the start of dinner, glanced briefly at Amina. For the first time, his gaze carried not disdain, but something else, an awakening recognition that something had begun to shift within his home. News spread faster than any rumor. Barely a week after Amina stepped into the Morel estate, Paris tabloids exploded with headlines. Angel or opportunist? The shadowy past of Amina Diallo. A woman of color enters Versailles. Shock or strategy? Photographs of Amina leaving a café, carrying her worn canvas bag, were placed beside glamorous shots of Parisian ladies in Chanel gowns. Social media ignited, many hailed her as the heroine who saved the girl, but just as many spat venom. Just an opportunist climbing the ladder, using a deaf-mute child to advance herself. Meanwhile, in the upper floors of Morel Technologies, investors confronted Adrien directly. "Do you realize how your family's image is being damaged?" A woman of unknown background, suddenly at the center of the news. This could sink the stock price. Adrien sat silent, his hand tightening around his coffee cup. Never before had he been forced to defend a personal choice before the board. Yet in his mind, the image of his daughter signing safe glowed with undeniable clarity. That evening, a lavish soirée unfolded at the Morel estate, drawing Paris's most powerful figures. ministers, investors, journalists. Crystal chandeliers blazed with light, and the notes of a grand piano floated through the air. Amina followed Élodie, wearing a simple sea-blue dress. Though she tried to remain composed, she felt every gaze's weight. Daniel Rousseau, a glass of red wine in hand, stepped to the center of the room, his voice elegant yet laced with poison. Paris is truly generous. From Café Waitress to dining with the elite. But I wonder, do we know who she is? Or is she nothing more than a shadow yet to be exposed? The hall fell silent, save for hushed whispers. A female reporter clutched her phone, typing furiously. From across the room, Margot watched, her icy gaze like a blade poised for Amina's collapse. Amina drew a deep breath, pressing her hands beneath the table to mask their trembling. Then she rose, head held high, her voice ringing clear, each word sharp as steel. I don't need all of you to know who I am. I only need one person to know, and she does. She turned, signing a small phrase to Élodie. The girl instantly burst into giggles, her laughter echoing through the gilded hall, spilling like light that drove away the shadows. That laughter choked the whispers into silence, froze Daniel's smirk into stone. From a distance, Adrien watched, admiration flickering in his eyes, mixed with a disquiet he could not name. In that instant, he knew that Amina had transformed from a target of scorn into the center of the room, and it was also the first moment Adrien realized her presence might alter not just his daughter's life, but the entire world he fought to protect. After the soiree, the Morel estate sank into silence. Only the faint glow of golden lamps spilled from the tall windows, casting a dim sheen across the rose gardens, damp with dew. Amina led Élodie upstairs, wishing her good night with a few simple signs. The child's relieved smile softened Amina's heart, but her instincts pounded against her chest. Darkness was closing in. As Amina descended the staircase, a murmur drifted from the hallway near the library. A door stood ajar, a sliver of yellow light spilling out. She froze, listening. Inside, Margot Delacourte's sharp voice cut the air. Do you truly believe she's harmless, Daniel? A Belleville woman with no name or family was suddenly stepping into the Morel household. I can smell calculation. Daniel Rousseau chuckled softly, his laugh thick with scheming. Exactly. Adrien is blinded. That girl Amina threatens more than his reputation. If she earns Élodie's trust, the only leverage keeping Adrien in play will crumble. Margot's tone dropped, hissing like steel dragged across stone. Have you forgotten? I've served the Morel family for 3 decades. I know how to remove the unnecessary. Daniel's laughter ceased, his voice laced with insinuation. No need to remove her just yet. Let the press do the digging. A few photos, a bit of her past, some whispered rumors. Someone like Amina won't stand long. When she falls, Adrien falls with her. And when that happens, the clink of wine glasses clang. Amina stood rigid in the hallway, her heart pounding, every whispered word piercing her skin like needles. Her hands curled into fists, nails digging so deep into her palms they drew blood. She understood this was no longer just about her. This was war. A war hopelessly uneven. An immigrant girl with nothing but an ordinary past, against the gilded class wielding power and wealth like weapons. Footsteps echoed. Amina darted back into the shadows at the base of the stairs, holding her breath. Margot opened the door, her gaze sweeping the empty hall, before striding slowly toward the kitchens. Only when her figure vanished did Amina dare exhale. She glanced up the staircase where Élodie slept peacefully. Her hands trembled, but her eyes burned with a different fire. If they sought to destroy her, she would fight armed with truth, with resolve, and with the very hands that had shielded a child from the wheels of death. 3 days later, Paris awoke to a media earthquake. On the front page of Le Courrier Parisien, Amina's portrait filled half the cover. Deep black eyes, hastily tied curly hair, a gentle smile, but the headline above sliced like a blade. The Morel family's new tutor. The tainted past of Amina Diallo. The article dissected her life detail by detail. Her father, an immigrant laborer unemployed for years. Her mother, a hotel cleaner. Her teenage years spent protesting against discrimination in Belleville, where police once detained her. even fabrications that she had owed rent and survived on welfare. Instantly, television talk shows seized on the scandal. A platinum blonde host smirked at the camera. Could this all be a ploy? An African-born woman with no stable career suddenly appeared in the home of one of France's most powerful billionaires? The public has every reason to be suspicious. Social media erupted with thousands of comments. Knew it, nobody's that selfless. Just an opportunist. Adrien needs to wake up. Poor little Élodie, being used in this game. Inside the estate, Amina sat frozen before the television. Her chest clenched, dragging her back into the past 17 years old, standing in the rain, shoulder to shoulder with hundreds holding banners reading Égalité, only to be shoved onto the cobblestones by riot police. From the doorway, Margot's mocking laugh pierced the silence. I told you, stains from the past never wash clean. Adrien entered, his face taut with tension. He switched off the television and fixed his gaze on Amina, eyes tangled with anger at the media and confusion over the truth. How much of this is real? His voice was sharp, interrogating. Amina drew in a breath, her eyes blazing with defiance. All of it, and I am not ashamed. My father worked his whole life to raise me. My mother scrubbed hotel floors to pay my tuition. I marched because I wanted a fairer world. If that makes me unworthy in your eyes, then I'll leave now. Adrien froze. He hadn't expected that answer. No excuses, no pleading, only raw honesty and pride. At that moment, Élodie appeared at the doorway. She looked at Amina, then at her father, her small hands moving with firm clarity. She's real. She's good. Those innocent yet resolute signs cleaved through the wall of doubt. Adrien closed his eyes, inhaling sharply, his hand curling into a fist. He knew full well whose hands were orchestrating this media storm. Elsewhere, Daniel Rousseau lounged in a luxury hotel suite in the 8th arrondissement, sipping his wine with a victorious smile as the news ticker flashed across the screen. The campaign has begun. A week later, Paris was no longer speaking of politics or economics. Every newspaper, every café counter, every boardroom conversation revolved around a single name: Amina Diallo. On television, experts sat stiffly with folded arms, sparring in heated debate. A silver-haired man sneered into the camera. Who is she? A protester once arrested by the police is now sitting inside the Morel estate. This is not just a question of morality, it is a threat to France's image. A female journalist countered sharply. But she saved Élodie's life. The public cannot erase that truth. Social media surged like a storm tide. One faction launched the hashtag #ExpelAmina, branding her the Belleville opportunist. Another side fired back with Justice pour Amina, elevating her into a symbol of resistance against injustice. Within days, her name climbed to the top of Europe's trending lists. At school, Élodie endured whispers and pointed fingers. A rich boy jutted his chin and sneered. She's just pretending to be good. My dad says so. Élodie said nothing, but tears welled in her eyes. That evening she refused to eat, clinging to Amina, signing with trembling hands. Don't go. Stay. Inside the estate, pressure mounted. The board of Morel Technologies issued an urgent statement. If Adrien does not sever ties with Diallo, major shareholders will withdraw their investments. Adrien hurled the stack of papers against the oak-paneled table, echoing through the room. His face was drawn, his eyes sunken from sleepless nights. He knew this was no longer personal, it was a calculated strike against the empire he had built. That night, an actual storm swept across Versailles. Wind screamed through the glass, thunder split the sky. Amina sat in her room, desk lamp casting weary shadows across her face. On her phone, hundreds of messages poured in threats, curses. Get out of France. Don't dream of climbing up by using a deaf child. Her breath came heavy, her hands shook. But when she turned, Élodie was fast asleep, with a faint smile on her lips and her tiny hand clutching the fabric of Amina's blouse. Amina gently brushed the child's hair, whispering, "They can come after me, but never touch you." Outside, as rain hammered and wind howled, a figure watched silently from a black car parked across the estate. In the flash of lightning, Daniel Rousseau's smile emerged cold as steel, promising that the storm of public opinion had only just begun. That night, The Morel estate lay shrouded in silence. After the storm, rain tapped against the windows, the moon veiled by black clouds, thickening the night into ink. Amina walked down the corridor. Heart heavy, she knew the moment of reckoning had come. Inside the vast study, Adrien sat behind a mahogany desk, surrounded by piles of newspapers and a laptop screen flashing headlines of attacks. The yellow lamp cast deep shadows across his lined face. Amina stepped in. The door shut behind her with a decisive click, like fate sealing itself. "You called for me?" Her voice was calm, yet sharp. Adrien didn't look up, his tone gravelly, frayed. "Do you understand what I'm losing? Shareholders, partners, 30 years of credibility, and all of it because of you." Blood rushed to Amina's face, but she held it in, her words breaking free like tempered steel. "Number. You're losing everything because you let them manipulate the truth. I am not your enemy, Adrien. Daniel Rousseau and Margot Delacourt are." Adrien's head jerked up, his eyes darkening. "And what proof do you have?" Amina stepped forward, placing a small recorder on the desk, its red light blinking. "That night, in the hallway, I heard everything. They want to destroy you, and I am just the weapon they're using." Adrien froze. His fingers trembled as he pressed play. Margot's voice hissed cold. Daniel's oily drawl slithered through. "When she falls, Adrien falls too. And when that happens..." The air thickened, suffocating. Adrien suddenly shot up, his chair crashing backward. His eyes flared not with exhaustion anymore, but with rage. "Those vipers." Amina met his gaze, her own burning bright. "You have two choices. One, stay silent and let them take you down. Stand with me and expose the truth, even if the world still doubts us." Adrien stepped closer, his shadow towering over Amina's more petite frame. For an instant, there was no longer a billionaire and an immigrant, only two people standing on the edge of a cliff. The pendulum clock ticked. Talk, talk, slicing the tension. Adrien's voice dropped, deep and resolute. "Fine. But remember this, Amina. From now on, we're not only fighting for my daughter, we're facing an entire world that was never meant for us." Amina lifted her chin, her reply cutting like a blade. "Then let the world see we will not bow." Outside the window, a shadow flickered. Daniel Rousseau was watching silently from a car parked near the gate. His smile was gone, replaced with burning hatred. Into his phone, he hissed, "It's time to push this pawn to the edge." Bạn có muốn mình dịch tiếp phần 10? Hồi kết tạm thời ngay bây giờ để khép lại chương đầu tiên của câu chuyện. Hay bạn muốn mình gộp cả 9 phần đã dịch thành một chương tiếng Anh liền mạch để dễ đọc như tiểu thuyết? 3 days later, Paris erupted in an unprecedented spectacle. In the middle of Place de la Concorde, under the relentless flashes of cameras, Adrien Morel, the man once deemed untouchable in finance, appeared unexpectedly, standing side by side with Amina. Before dozens of cameras, Adrien stood tall, his deep-set eyes fixed on the crowd. Beside him, Amina held Élodie's hand, her face calm yet proud. Adrien's voice carried through the microphone, low and resonant. "The public deserves the truth. This past week, you have heard fabricated stories about her, but I heard those in the shadows plotting to destroy my reputation by defaming Amina Diallo. Those lies came from Daniel Rousseau and Margot Delacourt." The crowd stirred, reporters pressing closer, microphones thrust forward. Adrien raised a hand, commanding silence, then pointed to Amina. "She is not here for money. She is here for my daughter." When the whole world turned its back, Amina reached out her hand to Élodie. "And I will not allow anyone to defile that truth again." Applause broke, first scattered, then swelling into a wave. Amina drew a steadying breath and stepped to the microphone. Her voice rang out, trembling yet fierce. "I do not regret protesting. I do not regret being called an outsider. I do not regret coming from poverty. I am proud that my father worked with his hands, that my mother scrubbed floors to pay for my education, and that I marched for equality. If that makes me unworthy of these gilded rooms, then those rooms must change. Not me." The atmosphere ignited. A group of students in the back shouted, "Justice for Amina! Justice for Amina!" The chant rippled outward, hundreds, then thousands of voices rising in unison, breaking down the walls of prejudice. Élodie tugged at Amina's hand, her eyes sparkling, and signed in front of the cameras. family. The square fell silent for a heartbeat before applause, chants, and even tears from strangers merged into one tide. Elsewhere, in the shadow of a luxury hotel, Daniel Rousseau hurled his wine glass against the wall, shards exploding across the floor. His plan lay in ruins. Margot vanished from the estate, carrying her bitterness into exile. Amina lifted her gaze to the Parisian sky, where the storm clouds were breaking, dawn's light peeking through. She knew the battle against prejudice would never truly end, but they had won today, at least today. Adrien laid a hand on her shoulder, his voice warm, stripped of all distance. "Thank you for teaching me the lesson I was blind to all my life." Amina smiled, not the smile of victory, but the quiet smile of one who stands unbroken after the storm.